Georgia 34, Clemson 3. Sad, sad violin music here. 1.5 Chalai. That's all I can give this game. 1.5 Chalai because there was a significant amount of yawning that everyone outside of the Georgia fan base did in the second half. This game went exactly half the way I expected it to go. Half because I got what I thought I'd get from Georgia. Georgia is the team I thought they'd be. Clemson is not, just wrong on them, just whiffed on them. I think I was loosely quoted around here as saying, I'll take Georgia to win. I didn't bet on the game, but if I did, I think I'd take Clemson plus the points. Yet nope. And my reasoning there was, I'll have to see Clemson get handled to believe it. Well, friends, I believe it because I saw Clemson get handled. What kind of day was it in Mercedes-Benz Stadium yesterday, the grave of the Georgia Dome? Georgia had 169 rush yards. In fact, let's just padlock stat it. Georgia, 169 rushing yards. Clemson had 188 total. Georgia nearly outrushed Clemson in totality of yardage. As for totality of yardage, how's 447 to 188? Completely boa constricted. That was Clemson all day long. Now, I'm from Georgia. Out of my social circle, the biggest slice of the pie is made up of Georgia fans. So I talk to Georgia fans every hour of every day. Even if I didn't want to, I could not avoid that. Not that I want to, in most cases. But I really hope Georgia fans appreciate what they don't have to worry about. 99% of the sport, even the good teams, have to deal with variants of preparedness, I guess is the best way to put it. Even the good ones have their team show up and occasionally just lay an egg, if you want to call it that, but it's just they're inconsistent in the level of preparedness that they display by how well they execute. Georgia just doesn't suffer from it. I know everyone knows Kirby Smart's good. I know everyone thinks Georgia's got the best coach and the best coaching staff and the best program, but they're really better than even you think they are because there's no variance in that. Think about how shocked you'd be if you watched Georgia football and they showed up unprepared. They can lose. They don't lose very often, but they could lose a football game. But it's because you out-executed them. They never hand you a game, or you'd never beat them because they no-show. That sounds so simple. Well, Josh, they're on scholarship. Of course they'll show up. Well, Josh, they're paid millions or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the job title. Of course they'll show up. No, it's not automatic. They're not robots. So everyone doesn't automatically show up. You got a program there that does it every week, week in and week out. And if they didn't, it would be the biggest surprise. Georgia showing up flat would actually be a bigger surprise than like Vandy pulling an upset over Virginia Tech. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this goes to halftime 6-0 yesterday. And this bad boy right here, I'm holding up my phone. I'm holding up the iJosh if you're listening on podcast. Starts going crazy with the aforementioned Georgia fans in my social circle trashing their own team. You know who you are. I don't have to out you publicly. And then we end up with a 34-3 blowout. And, I mean, you make Dabo do everything but cry at the postgame press conference, which we will take a look at in a second. And I look at it, and I think, man, what a beautiful game. Beautiful not because it was perfect by any stretch. Hopefully you're not perfect in week one, or else you peaked in week one. But Georgia displayed what all the elite teams can do. They showed multiple ways to win. Now, sometimes over the course of a season, an elite team shows multiple ways to win. It just so happens Georgia did it in one afternoon. Georgia, in the first half, takes their defense, and they basically fashion themselves into a shiv, and it goes into Clemson's side, and they bleed out. And it didn't stop. A lot of blood. Clemson had a lot of blood to give yesterday, and Georgia just painted the walls with it. So we go into the half 6-0. Offense is sputtering. Offensive line is at best. And then they come out the second half, a rare second padlock stat. Georgia, 6-0 now. 6-0. They scored touchdowns on 4 of their next 5 drives. So they showed you that top 5 offense potential in the same game that they showed you elite defense potential or top 5 defense potential, and just ho-hum, you took a team that has won multiple national titles in the last decade and turned them inside out. Less than 200 miles from their home campus. What is Clemson right now? I think it's a question that a lot of their fan base is asking. A lot of college football has wondered, is Clemson just taking a step back? Has Clemson permanently taken a step back? I think one of the most pathetic things I saw yesterday was Clemson gets pantsed 34-3, and then folks wanted to say, well, Georgia does this to a lot of teams. You're the team they used to say that about. How quickly people forget this. It used to be, well, yeah, we got blown out, man. I mean, they got decapitated, but Clemson does that to a lot of teams. You're the team now with your head rolling around on the floor. By the way, go back to that quote, Georgia does this to a lot of teams. Well, are you a lot of teams or are you Clemson? Or did you used to be Clemson? You remember in Angels in the Outfield, Ranch Wilder, former baseball player, now is the announcer, and little JP, not me, the little JP with the backwards hat and Angels in the Outfield walks up, says, you used to be Mel Clark. It was Mel Clark. It wasn't Ranch Wilder. Like, what a slap in the face. You used to be Clemson? I guess that's what it's come to for some folks. Oh, well, Clemson got blown out, but Georgia will do that to a lot of people. I don't know that that's where the standard bar has been reset to for the totality of the fan base. Maybe it is, but I went and listened to Dabo Swinney after the game yesterday because, there's a stance a lot of people have taken on him. A lot of people have yelled, you better use the transfer portal or the game's going to leave you behind. And Dabo has stood pretty resolute, and I've thought both things are fair. I thought that, hey, Dabo's got his values and principles, and he can stick to them. I may even respect it as I disagree with it. But the thing about it is the football games will ultimately arrive. That's how you'll ultimately be judged. It's the most fair thing about this game. You get to try it your way, and especially at a place where you've got all the resource in the world, you will be judged on the outcomes of 12 football games at least per fall. So more and more, those games are going the way that Clemson fans don't want them to in the big moments. So Dabo steps to the podium yesterday, and this is what he had to say.
Biggest thing is, that's when you get beat like that, that's on the head coach. That's on me. So it's just complete ownership of just a absolute crap second half, and just really disappointed. But I've done it long enough. This is sometimes you get your butt kicked, and we did today, and that's not what we came here to do. But you got to give Georgia credit, and we got to move on. We got to learn from it.
So what does that actually mean? It's all on the head coach. Yeah, it is. What does that actually mean? Does that mean any lessons learned? Does it mean anything's going to change? I highly doubt it. As I've told you before, Dabo's the white whale of this program. He's the one of the Pate State Speaker Series I've always wanted to have on. They've never agreed to do it. I always wondered why, but we've never been able to have him on the show. But if we had him on the show, since we haven't, I've always had to envision how this would go. I always imagined that if you injected truth serum into Dabo, and we require that of all our guests, we just take the syringe, we say, trust us, bro, and we inject truth serum into him. If we did that to Dabo, and we started talking about this transfer portal stuff, he would say something like, why in the world should I have to change? Like, why is it on me to change? And my response would be, you don't have to change. That's always been my thought on this. You do not have to change as long as you're willing to accept the consequence. Because there is not a world, to be clear, where Clemson continues to do things the way they did in the mid-20 teens, and they continue to compete at the highest level of the sport. Still be a really good program. Still be a solid 9-win caliber program. And there aren't many of those, even, on average per year, even at 9. But Clemson's not an elite program. There's nothing dynamic. Did you watch them on the field yesterday? That allegedly is the team with the 5th most talented roster in college football. There are far more than 5 rosters more dynamic and talented than that Clemson roster. Now, I had someone, because I was running this by someone on my drive back to Jacksonville last night, had to fly out this morning, and they were saying, well, okay, but, I mean, Georgia's so elite, I don't know that the portal would have helped Clemson here. You have no clue what the portal would have done for Clemson. I'm not talking about one player or 1 year, by the way, but you're telling me, you watched Klubnik play yesterday, average as grits, no offense to grits, you're telling me them getting in the sweepstakes for Cam Ward wouldn't make a difference? And by the way, what if he came in conjunction with a wide receiver? What if they picked up an offensive lineman last year? What if one more linebacker was added? I just named you 4 players, not one. So you're telling me a sprinkling of 3 or 4 impact players couldn't potentially change the outcome of games? If you're telling me that, I'm telling you you're wrong. But broad strokes purposes here, Dabo's where he's going to be. Dabo's where he's going to be. It'd be very surprising to me if he changed that approach. So until then, what I'm going to interpret is Clemson's a pretty good program. They're going to be a notch below the best. They will not match rosters with Georgia. Now and moving forward, they won't match rosters with Miami in their own conference. They will certainly not touch a Texas, an Oregon, an Ohio State, an Alabama. And so you start listing, and as long as you're comfortable taking, the 7th or 8th or 9th row in the bus instead of one of those first 2 or 3 rows, that's okay. If you're not comfortable with that, then you got to make changes. I'm not talking about coaching changes. I'm talking about coaches making changes. So both sides of that equation are fair to me. You get to choose however you want to do it, and then the sport will do to you what it does to anyone who voluntarily ties a talent acquisition mechanism hand behind their back, and you live with it. That's the way it works. So Georgia looks really good. Georgia, I've got power rated as the number 1 team in the JP poll right now. They played like the number 1 team in the JP poll. So thank you, Kirby. Most dependable commodity in the sport right now. Bet on Kirby Smart, even though I said I wouldn't if I bet on this game.